Welcome back to the Photo Banter Podcast. I'm your host, Alex Gagne, and on today's podcast, I speak with photographer and podcaster Ric Stovall. Ric specializes in architectural photography and has worked with clients such as the Ritz Carlton, Four Seasons, Marriott International, and the Wall Street Journal, to name a few. Ric is also the host of the Visual Revolutionary podcast, where he interviews top working photographers, filmmakers, and creatives. I was excited to get Ric on the podcast to hear about his journey with photography and starting his own podcast. So I hope you enjoy, and thanks so much for listening. And definitely go check out Ric's podcast, Visual Revolutionary, which is available on all podcast platforms. I'll put the link in the descriptions, but he's got a lot of cool interviews, so definitely go check that out as well. Thanks so much, and hope you enjoy. All right, well, now welcome on Ric Stovall. I'm excited to have you on, Ric. I was on your podcast a couple months ago, so I'm excited to turn the tables on you and talk about everything you're working on and your journey with photography, man. So thanks so much for taking the time to do this, man.
Oh, dude, thank you for having me, man. I'm excited and honored. I don't belong on a show like this, but I'm excited to do it.
That's not true, man. That's not true. Humble. I guess first off, man, how's your holidays, man? We're in a new year. I guess the new year starting off for you,
Year,
man?
new day.
Yeah.
Life is good, man. I got no complaints. I've been super fortunate to really kind of roll through all of this and doing okay. I live in a good spot where we can enjoy the mountains, enjoy nature. But I'm excited, man. Excited for a new year.
Yeah, because you're in Colorado, right?
Yeah, right outside of Vail, kind of Beaver Creek area, in the mountains.
So did you guys get affected by those fires that are out in Colorado?
No, one of my best friends actually lost his house in that fire. Super sad. That's about 3 hours away, and that's right outside of Boulder, basically. So
yeah, I saw the photos, man. It was insane. It just took out entire neighborhoods, and it's just down to rubble, man. It was fucking crazy.
Yeah, super sad. And just strange, like a super strange time to have wildfires like that. And right before Christmas, the real unfortunate part, I mean, all of it was obviously, but the very next day a huge snowstorm hit that area. And so, I mean, one day it wouldn't have happened, and it was so dry before that storm hit that it was just a lot of kindling basically ready to go.
Yeah, it was gnarly. I guess in the new year, are you like a New Year's resolution person? Are you like someone that kind of like at the beginning of the year kind of sets goals or anything like that? Or how do you kind of operate?
I set them like throughout the year, honestly. I mean, I am a New Year's resolution. I at least like to, mentally, I guess, kind of, manifest what I want. And I am a big believer in writing things down, and I do that throughout the year anyway. And I keep a couple different notebooks where, it's not just the simplicity, I think, of like writing goals, but like, writing some ways that I feel like help me get there. It's easy to like write the things you want, but then it's like, how does it happen? And so
Yeah,
sometimes that's the mistake of people are just like, I want success, what's it look like getting there?
Yeah. And I don't know about you, man. Like, I appreciate the holiday season because it's like one, it feels like one of the only times in the year where stuff kind of slows down for a week or so, and you actually get a chance to because you know how the freelance photo game is. It's just like a nonstop, like this bullet train, like this every day, this like whatever it is, shooting and editing and running your business and all that shit. So it's like, I don't know about you, but like, do you kind of carve out time for yourself to like have breaks throughout the year? Will you take time off, or like how do you kind of balance that like mental, like the chaos of running a freelance business?
Yeah, that's an important question, man. And it's something I've gotten way better at over the years, honestly. I think early on in your career, it's like and don't hear me wrong, like I still deal with this struggle, but I think early on, it's a real struggle of, when you're busy, it's great and you're making money. And when you're not, you're like, how do I get busy again to continue this train, kind of moving down the track. And over the years, I mean, I've been doing it for long enough and, quote unquote, I guess, successful, whatever that means, but financially making a living from it long enough now that, like I've gotten the hang of the idea that just because things slow down, they're going to pick back up. And so all those times where I'm like too busy to enjoy all the things that I want to do, all the hobbies I do, I really appreciate it now, to where it's like, as soon as things slow down, instead of like thinking I need to hustle and be, sending emails and calling clients, I just enjoy the time I have with my kids, or, time in the mountains, whatever it is. So yeah, I take lots of breaks, maybe too many breaks.
No, definitely not, man. I think it's important because I know, like early on, like starting out, like because you can, the traps of like social media and like watching YouTube videos, because it's just nonstop. There's so many of these like motivational, like grind, hustle,
Yeah,
build your business,
yeah.
become a
I
million,
hear
like
you.
all,
I hear you, Gary V.
yeah, all this shit, like, and you can make you feel like I need to wake up at 3 a.m. every day and
Uh-huh.
work
Uh-huh.
16 hours a day. And then what you realize is like, actually, that's probably like counterintuitive. Like it's just, it goes against you. Like for me, when I have the chance to take a break and you can kind of pause and take a step back of like what you're actually doing and what you want to accomplish. Like, I don't know. After getting to, you get to talk to so many photographers too. I remember I talked to this one photographer. I'm like, what you been up to? It's like, I don't know, man. Like, I kind of been chilling for like the last couple of weeks. I was like, for real? Like, and this is like a successful. I was like, and that just like changed my mindset. I was like, wow, it's okay to like chill for a minute and then like
Yeah.
just keep it going.
Yeah, dude. Not only is it okay, I think it's important.
Yeah.
Like one of the big things, or the big motivating factors that started my podcast was I was super burned out, like, of the photography game, honestly, man. And a lot of that, I think, came from a multitude of things. Um, but one of the big things was I was just, like I was so focused on being busy, um, and making money, that I forgot to just like, have fun, man. And it's just so important. And look, dude, I love like that the David Goggins of the world are out there, and they motivate me too. But
Yeah.
at the same time, I'm like, it's good to like fuck off sometimes,
See, but I look at David Goggins. Sometimes I get it's motivational, but like I'm like at the end, I'm like, is that dude actually happy with his life? Like I was like, because it's just like, because that's his job. Like he's like an
Right.
influencer, motivational guy, so he has to keep like feeding that engine. And I'm like, I always look at him like I could see how it's motivational, but I was like, is that dude really happy? Like I was like, I don't know.
Right.
It's just
Right.
interesting to look at.
I think it's cool that someone like that exists, or the Jockos out there. It's like, it's it can be like a source of inspiration of like how hard you can push yourself.
Yeah.
But I don't have the desire to
Yeah.
be that person. And I think there's like that fine balance. I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's like, look, man, if you're trying to make a career in something as fickle as photography, like, you definitely better be willing to be a hustler and to put the work in, and
Yeah.
work more hours than a lot of people definitely believe that you do as a photographer. But at the same time, man, I just think it's so important to have things that you really, outside of, like, I enjoy photography. I do.
Yeah.
I enjoy what I do for a living.
Yeah.
But I think it's really important to have things outside of that, that you love. You're just as passionate about those things. And
Yeah.
it just brings balance, man. I think balance is, I'm trying to, like, I'm trying to walk the middle path as much as I can in life. And, it's
It's
like
hard.
there's extremes on both sides. And, I just try to not get too distracted by them, I guess.
Yeah, because like what are some things like when you do have time off, like what are those things that you enjoy doing?
I mean, dude, I pay a lot of money to be, like, it costs a lot to live in the mountains where I live. And so all of those things, I snowboard and mountain bike and fly fish, and, like, I do a lot of mountain activities. I got teenage kids, and I made a decision like fairly early on in my career as well, where it was like things were kind of getting successful. I got an agent out of New York. I was starting to travel, and my kids are still pretty young. And I just, and this is no offense to like the guys out there that do travel a lot and have kids. I made the decision, like, I want to be at like their soccer games and stuff. I want to be around and be present. And so I tried to create a client base and a photography career that could allow me to be home more often. And so that's been part of that balance and that free time as well, man. Just like hanging with my kids and my wife.
That's dope, man. Like this saying, like my job's not my life. Like I love
Yeah,
my job, but it's not my whole life. My life is like getting to interact with the people I care about and like do the other activities. Like I do, like you're saying, I do like photography, but those other things are just as important, I think.
totally. And I'm sure you see it all the time with your show, man. Like, and once again, I'm just like the David Goggins of the world. Like I'm inspired by some of the photographers I have on my show where it's like it it seems like they just like they have to always be shooting, like and it is, I think it is who they are, and like it's inspiring, man. It's just not me. Like I love it. I really do love the medium and the art form of photography, but I am like so many other things besides a photographer, and I like it that way. And so I don't know. It's just, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not even saying it's good or bad. It just is what it is.
Yeah, I think it's important to like just carve out your own lane because I think like when I was younger, like I was saying, like I'd look at these like motivational videos and I'm like, I gotta like do exactly what they did and like do
Right.
that, and then I realized like, oh no, I don't. And like one thing that kind of stuck out in my mind, like when I met that dude, the Larry Fink, the photographer, and he's like one of those guys who he's constantly shooting, has his camera on him, and he's just shooting his day to day. Like he could be shooting his breakfast or like there's some light coming into his kitchen or whatever. And I was just sitting, I was like, damn, I gotta like do that more often. And he was like, why? Like you don't have to. Like
Yeah,
this is what I do. And I was like, oh, you're right. Like that's not like you don't have to do that. Like you can just find your little fucking lane or whatever, you know.
totally. Yeah. I don't know about you, but like from doing my show, you know, the more chances I get to like talk to all these photographers, filmmakers, artists, whatever it is, you just like you get to also figure out like all the different like what that looks like in all its different forms.
Yeah.
Because I think you're right when you're young and you're hungry and um you're just getting little glimpses on like what it looks like, what you
Yeah.
think it looks like, I guess, to be a professional
Exactly.
photographer. It's hard, man. And you're like, yeah, I got to do all these things. And so the opportunity to talk to all these people and kind of see how everybody handles it differently, you're like, oh yeah, just,
Yeah.
and you just realize like it works, like
Yeah.
whatever, I think like whatever works for you, then it works for you. And if it brings you some joy and it's paying the bills, and then to me, man, that's success. It's like for all the legendary shooters I've had on my show, sometimes I have people on and they're like, that's crazy that you asked me. And I'm like, you're working, man. It's like, I think to me, that means like you made it, man. If you're paying your bills and shit's taken care of and you're doing all that by pushing a button on a camera, that's incredible.
Yeah. I don't know about you, like, because we've both been doing this a while and interviewed like hundreds of photographers, like, and like you, like, I've gotten to interview all these guys who are like my idols and I looked up to. But
Right.
honestly, now, like, I've been trying to like have more like younger people on, and it's obviously awesome to have Dan Winters and Platon, all these guys, and get to interview them. I'm so grateful. But
Mm-hmm.
I get almost just as much satisfaction interviewing like someone who's younger, who's like just like kind of getting into
Yes.
it, and like this has that like passion. Cause like there's definitely like, I don't know if you ever assisted, but like when I was assisting, you can see like dudes who are burnt out and like don't really give a shit anymore, which I
Yep.
get it. Like people move on or whatever. But like getting to talk to those younger people that are like still like this hyped at the beginning, man, that's just as awesome as talking to like some of these legends sometimes.
I mean, I totally agree, man.
Yeah.
Although you said Platin, and I still haven't gotten him on my show, so
You can do, man. I had to like keep banging on that fucking door. So
I'm jealous of that one because I love that dude. Yeah, I totally agree. And then, like, I made the mistake even for a while there where like I went on a run. This was who knows how long ago, but I went on a run where it was just like big name after
yeah, yeah,
big
yeah,
after big name,
yeah,
and you start thinking like, oh, I've just got like nothing but legends now. Like that's all I want to talk to.
yeah,
And then you realize like, at some point you got to follow this up with just somebody, and like you said, they're all important, and not only are they all important, I totally agree with you when you talk to some 25-year-old who's already killing it and who's just like hungry, man. And
Yeah.
they're still so excited, and you get to feed off some of that energy where there are some of those real veteran shooters that are still super excited about doing it, but some of them you can tell like
Yep.
they don't have that, they don't have that drive and that energy that's infectious like a young person that's been on my show.
No, definitely. I agree. And I guess to go back, man, like where did you grow up and like how did you kind of get into photography initially?
Yeah. It's a super roundabout story. I don't, like I'm definitely not one of those people that just found it early. And that's, like I have some of those people on my show where you're just like, oh wow, you had it all carved out in the eighth grade or something, like I did not, man. I went through a lot of like trial and error and criminality.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
I will say that like, in hindsight, I think, I have spent time like looking back and trying to figure out uh not only what started like photography for me, but where I just got turned on to like the way I look at things. I grew up in Kentucky, by the way, in like
Okay.
rural kind of Appalachian area. Um, but early on, man, like my dad, he had a camera. He was in Vietnam and he had a camera that he carried around with him when he was in Vietnam. He's a pilot, a spotter pilot. And those guys were the guys that like flew the little Cessna planes right over the tree line and would,
Yeah.
like drop smoke bombs and stuff to
Yeah.
let the fighter jet. So he would take all these pictures out of the side of his plane. And then when we were growing up, he shot slide film constantly, and we would do like family slideshows. And at a pretty early age, man, I do remember like going through a lot of his Vietnam slides. And once again, this is in hindsight. I don't know that I was having these,
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
big thoughts, when I was, 7, 8 years old. But there was something there, like the effect of like, this moment in time being captured. And we had National Geographics around the house, and then I got real into skateboarding and all the, artwork that came with that world, and punk rock and on and on. But yeah, I grew up in like it was a weird little town, man. It was there was a big Fortune 5 oil company there. That's actually who my dad worked for. He was a pilot for them, a private pilot.
Hmm.
And so it was this weird mix of like, you had a ton of money from the oil company. He had some of these execs that were multimillionaires, and then some of the most extreme poverty in the country,
Yeah.
of that Appalachian area. So it was I mean, I liked it. It was a cool place. I didn't know any different, obviously. But it was a pretty cool place to grow up. A lot of woods and the Ohio River. We were right on it.
Were you like someone like as a kid, like once you kind of got into your teens or like high school years, were you like, I want to get out of this place
Oh
and
my
move
God,
somewhere?
yeah.
Yeah. You were like, I gotta
Yeah.
get out of here.
Yeah, I started running away a bit when I was in high school. I mean, I was like a good student and stuff, but I got into drugs and shit pretty early. And my parents were pretty strict, um, pretty strict Christian.
Hmm.
We're super tight now, and they were great parents, but like we definitely didn't see eye to eye on a lot of things. And so I just started bailing all the time. And I started seeing, like I said, I was like real into like uh, music period my whole life, punk rock, early hip hop, um, just like rock, like I'm a child of the 90s and like late 80s. And so, just like radio stations, it was like I grew up listening to 60s and 70s music because that's what they played on the radio, along with all the shit that I liked. And
Yeah.
so I just kind of liked everything. But I started seeing the Dead in high school. They were still touring. It was like the last wave of Jerry, I mean, I guess they're still touring, but Jerry was still alive. And I started running away and seeing shows. And especially then, man, when I started going, I mean, we traveled too, like growing up, but especially then and just seeing kind of a counterculture like that moving around the country, I was like, yeah, I got to get out of here, man. This town is, there's nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you mentioned like skateboarding. I was always curious about that because you've had like a lot of like you've had Arto on and like Templeton and all these guys. And I grew up skateboarding myself. That was like my whole life. Like what was like the skate scene in Kentucky like when you were growing up?
Yeah. I mean, it was like it was there, it was that weird time period though where it was like between the death of vert and the birth of like street, and that, and skateboarding just lost so much popularity. So I remember like, because I was super into it in middle school, and I continued to like skate through high school, but not as much. But I remember the summer between my eighth grade year and my freshman year in high school, one of my friends, he had gotten sponsored by Grind King.
Oh yeah.
Um, and so he was like one of the local kind of legends of our crew, like he was sponsored. We thought it was so cool. And then he went to high school and he quit skating and started playing football. And we were just like, oh, man, Alan quit skating. Like, what the fuck? So I mean, I think that just that story like really represented, it was in a weird shift, like it was definitely not cool at all to be a skateboarder around there. It was like that whole era of skateboarding is not a crime stickers.
Yeah. The Santa Cruz. Yeah.
So, but once again, in hindsight, I just realized like how much art and photography and music was coming into my life via skateboarding, because especially in those early like middle school years, there were a couple people that I knew that had half pipes, and we would hang out over there, and all the older kids would hang out over there too. And one of my best friends, he had a big mini ramp, it was like 10 foot wide. Actually, I think it was like 14 feet wide,
Wow.
7 feet tall, all transition, no vert, and just a huge crew would hang out over there. And his older brother was like 5 years older than us. And so it was just all like, suicidal tendencies and Black Flag and skateboarding and Thrasher magazine. And to be in a small town in Kentucky like that and be exposed to the world kind of through these little snippets of a magazine, you're just like, look at what's going on in the rest of the country,
Yeah.
like I just wanted to be in, San Francisco or something.
Yeah, me too, man. Like 411 and Trans World were like my Bible, man. Like I had
Yeah.
never been to California. I read like every little like checkout and like knew all like the spots like EMB. And I was like, one day, man, I want to get there, dude. It was just like
Yeah.
I think for me, skateboarding, the coolest thing about it, it's like this melting pot of like so many different people like that get into it from different this from all over the place. And it's like even now, like if I go to San Francisco or like different cities, like if you just show up at the local spot with your board, there's this like almost like a brotherhood or like this people it's just an easy way to connect. Like I remember anytime I've ever moved, I instantly just go to the local skate shop and then start talking to the locals about like this, getting to know the area and stuff. It's that's what I always kind of enjoyed about it.
Totally. Well, and I think too, man, like, something that comes up on my show all the time, especially with a lot of those guys you were talking about, that, it's like these skateboarders turned artists of any type, I think it breeds like this this real DIY attitude of not only DIY of like, I can make it myself, but I can like push myself to do it, because like the whole I guess trajectory of learning to skateboard, it's like it's all on you, man. And the reward of it, I mean, unless you turn pro, which is probably not going to happen, like
Yeah.
it's not that much, man. There's like a lot of risk versus just straight personal reward. And so I think there's something in there as well that just like it gives you like a work ethic and a drive to be like, you eat shit down a 6 stair
Yeah.
and pick yourself up and try it again, even though you like really just, you're pretty hurt and you're like, I think I can get it. And like I said, for just the reward of turning to your friends and be like, oh shit, like I got it, so
Yeah, definitely, man. Yeah, because like you interviewed Arto, and he's like one of my favorite skaters of all time. And
yeah,
to
love that.
watch that guy go from like he was Thrasher Skater of the Year one year, like this gnarliest dude, and to watch like what he's doing now with photography is like
Yeah,
fucking incredible, man. And
yeah,
like you're saying, it's just like put in that work and like shit can kind of happen, you know?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, like I said, I think there's something there. There's a reason that like so many successful, creatives specifically come from that world, man. Because there's a lot of them, in
Yeah.
fashion, and photography, and filmmaking, chefs.
Yeah.
So many people have that backstory of skateboarding. And look, we're at an age where it's like, yeah, of course you skateboarded,
Mhm.
but yeah, I definitely credit that for a lot of, I think a lot of it was one of my first taste of like a counterculture too, you know, and like this culture of like, we're not trying to be what our parents are, you
Yeah.
know? And the thing about skateboarding, specifically from like, I guess my generation, is like, you look at all those guys and like they really, it was like this Peter Pan thing, you know? It's like none of them really grew up, I guess, like, you know, grew up, quote unquote. But I love that, man. You have like, you know, when Grant Britton came on my show, it's like, you know, man, he's like a grandpa, but he still looks like a 15-year-old skater. And I
Yeah,
love
it
that.
is. He's got the flat brim, and he's like, yeah,
Yeah.
he's still out there shooting the skaters, like at the pools out in San
It's
Diego
so
and shit.
cool, man.
Yeah,
So love that.
yeah, definitely. So, like, at what point did like photography kind of start to become like your focus? Because obviously, you
Something.
said you're kind of traveling around, seeing the dead and kind of seeing the country. But like, when did photography kind of take over for you?
Yeah. I got a camera early on. My dad actually gave me that camera. I think it's back here. This is a Canon TLB. I don't really
Oh
know
wow,
the history of
I've
this
never seen that
camera.
one. I got the
Yeah.
AE1 back here, but I never seen the that one.
Yeah, the TLB. The AE1 was like the pro body, and I think this was more like a prosumer type, you know,
Yep.
thing. Um, he gave me that camera when I was like a sophomore, I think, in high school. So, I mean, it was something that was around, man. I was taking pictures. I even like did yearbook photography for a year. Although I got kicked off that because I like the whole yearbook was just like me and my friends. We just like we infiltrated every picture in the yearbook, you know. Um, so it was something I knew about, but it was never something I thought I wanted to do. I think another thing about growing up in a small town like that, then like pre-internet and YouTube and Instagram, is like you just you weren't exposed to like some of the cool things you could do in life. So you just looked around at like the adults and you're like, oh, is
Yeah.
this like these are the options? I don't
It's
really
like,
want to do any of
yeah, it's
this,
like
you
you can
know?
be a banker, business guy, or like be a tradesman or something like that, pretty much.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I was a big reader and I was really into like Hunter S. Thompson and all the beat authors. And I was into a lot of like the, you know, like Ram Dass. I got real into Eastern mysticism and Buddhism and Zen and stuff at a pretty early age, all via psychedelics, if I'm being honest, you know.
Yeah.
I started doing that at a really early age. And that also like it's funny, man, because I watch a lot of people on my show kind of skirt around that issue. And I never really understood why, because I have to credit psychedelics definitely with like a huge shift in the way I looked at the world. You know, like it was a reality breaking barrier where you look at a lot of the things that people seem to take so seriously and you're like, maybe it's not that serious after all, you
Yeah,
know.
I never tried it. Like, what is it like when you do it? Like, what is it that it just kind of opens up your mind a little bit, and this makes you kind of, I don't know. Like, I've never, like I said, I've never experienced it. So I guess what do you feel like
Yeah,
you get out of it?
it's like ego death, you know. I mean, depending on the dose you take, I guess. But you know, I was young and taking very large doses. And by the way, I'm not promoting
Nah.
everyone run out and try psychedelics. uh, but I can't also deny the effects that they had. And it was, yeah, it was like a real early glimpse into like egoless,
Hmm.
you know, like you like a real sense of just being in the present, you know. And so anyway, I wanted to be a writer, and that was kind of my goal, man. I went to University of Kentucky to study English lit, and I just thought, I don't know, man, I'll go live adventures and be wild, and one day I'll write memoirs and they'll be cool because I'll have great stories to tell.
Yeah.
I think, you know, when you look at like, and I love Hunter S. Thompson and Bukowski and all those guys, but when you look at like the model they set, they probably ruined so many lives, you know, if people
Oh,
are like, yeah,
yeah.
dude, I'm gonna be the next Bukowski. I'm gonna day drink my way into the next beautiful novel, you know. And so I think I got caught up in that life for a while, and I was being wild, and like I said, I definitely got pretty into the drug scene, and then the drug scene led to selling drugs. You know, I started meeting a lot of people, and they seemed like they were making pretty good money, and so I did that for quite a while, man. And like I said, I think I was telling myself in my head, like, one day this is going to lead to like such a good book,
Yeah.
and so there were just wild stories. I dropped out of school, um and I just thought like the money's good, like, and it was, especially for 19, 20 years old. You're just like, this is crazy, like I had plenty of money, I could kind of do whatever I wanted. And I started getting in trouble a lot. And I was still in Kentucky, traveling a lot, like I said, kind of cruising around the country constantly. um had a lot of friends in like New York and in Pittsburgh. So I hung out in the city a lot. And once again, that kind of like, specifically, like Kentucky has like a huge outdoor marijuana scene.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was kind of involved in that. And that's why I would be in those cities a lot, a lot. And anyway, I kept getting in trouble. And so I decided to, like, I got to be done with this, And so I moved to Colorado. My sister had actually moved to Vail and she was living there already. And I moved to Colorado. That was 1998. And tried to stay out of trouble. Didn't really work very well. I definitely kind of got right back into the same scene out here.
Mm-hmm.
But when I got out here, man, I started meeting people. I just wanted to snowboard and party, really, if I'm being honest. Um, but I started meeting people that were shooting snowboarding. And I got this job my first year out here. I got fired from this job, but I got a job with this company called Sharpshooters. And like Vail actually like has these guys that I like work for Vail. But at the time it was like some company, and they were just like, they would position you at the top of lifts, and
Oh,
you
like
would,
grip and grand.
yeah,
Like,
totally. You would accost people to try to take their pictures. And then you'd give them a card and they'd come down to the store afterwards and you try to upsell them on all these prints. And
yeah.
but on some big powder day, I left my post and I was just snowboarding all day and I got fired. So that job didn't last very long. But anyway, I will credit that job in the sense that like it was kind of pushing me as, the kind of hustler aspect of photography. And then I started meeting all these people that were shooting snowboarding, and I started doing the same. And that's really where it started, man. I was just like, I wanted to be a snowboard photographer.
And did you kind of just reach a point of like you said, like the partying? I think everyone goes through that in some level. Like I know myself, like most of my 20s, I was just like drinking, going to bars all the time. And I just reached a point where I was just like sick of it. Like I was just like feeling like shit all the time. It's like you're not like really accomplishing anything. Like, did you kind of reach a point with this like partying and the drugs and stuff where you just were this kind of just wanted to be done with it?
Yeah, dude. Yeah, big time. Um, as much as I'll like still stick up for psychedelics, and I
Mm-hmm.
think marijuana is like fairly harmless. I don't really smoke weed that much anymore, but where it really went wrong is like for a while, man, I like dipped down the rabbit hole of a lot of opiates,
Yeah.
including heroin and all that shit. And I kept my shit together really well, like I managed it well. People thought I was fine, and like I've always been one of those people that had a pretty high tolerance for things. And so, I even kind of prided myself through the days of being able to get, super wasted, but nobody really know,
Mm.
and so after several years of being in Colorado, in Vail specifically, and partying and snowboarding, man, I was like super addicted to opiates. By then it was mostly Oxycontin, and I was just like, man, it was crazy how much I was taking. We were making trips to Mexico just to get pills for us, like not to sell.
Yeah.
And it got gross, it's just a gross behavior. And I really, I don't believe in those drugs at all. I think they're terrible. And I think the way they numb the pain, it's like they numb everything. And so I really just like, for as interested as I was in like spirituality and and this feeling of like we're all in this together with the psychedelics, all the opiates and the pills and stuff made me just like, I didn't give a shit about anybody but me for a long time, man. Like I kind of became a bad person. I mean, you know, just in the sense of like like I was a selfish asshole.
Oh yeah,
But
man. You're just like in the clouds. Like I know, like, and it's I think a lot of people they don't realize once you go down that hole of like doing opiates and stuff, like it's not just like, oh, like don't do drugs, stop doing it. Like my best friend Ryan, he died at like age 26 from that. And
Yeah.
it started off, this being your 20s, drinking, smoking weed, partying, and then it got into, he's like, oh, I'll try this. But then those things just take over your fucking life. Like
Yeah.
yeah. It's
Yeah. And once again, like, man, so many of my heroes were drug addicts,
mhm.
like all these artists and stuff that I like really looked up to, whether it was musicians. I've always been a big fan of jazz.
Yep.
You just looked and you're like, yeah, like heroin, that's what's up.
Yeah.
And like I almost like wanted to be a heroin addict for a minute, I was,
Yeah.
like because
Yeah,
it was
it's like romantic when you're reading about Hunter S. Thompson. Like it's just
yeah,
like romantic, but the reality of it, like feeling like shit and like, yeah,
gross.
yeah,
Yeah, it's gross.
yeah,
So anyway, man, I had some more legal trouble while I was out here. I was taking pictures and would get published here and there, man.
yeah.
Like small publications. I got hooked up with this magazine called Heckler that was
Oh
out
yeah, I
of
remember Heckler.
yeah. So I was kind of like their Colorado guy for a little bit. Um, they came out here for a snowboard competition and I met the guys. I was already submitting to them and stuff. And so, I thought like I could probably I think I can do this, but I was still selling drugs because it was easy money. I
Yep,
mean, I think what really messed me up is there's something about like if you come up as like a broke artist,
yep,
right? Like that whole starving artist thing. If you come up that way, you're way more likely that you can sustain that, living off nothing.
yep.
But because I went from like, making 10, 20 grand a pop
Damn.
at like age 18, to then like, getting $100 for a magazine picture or something, I was like, this shit sucks.
Yeah,
Like I was ready to make money. And so I think that part kind of like it made me not really willing to be like as patient as you need to be to find success in that world of like adventure photography.
yeah.
But anyway, I got in some trouble again. I cleaned up. I went cold turkey off a terrible habit. And that was like 2000, either 2000, 2001, can't
Hmm.
remember. And that was it, dude. I never looked back, like I was done with that shit. I was done with that life. And I was like, yeah, I'm gonna make it as a photographer. And I really started shooting just kind of outdoor adventure in general, a lot of rock climbing, kind of the early downhill mountain biking scene, skateboarding. I'd covered some skateboard competitions for Heckler. I was like gotten snowboarder and stuff like a couple times. Um, and once again, I was just like, my wife had a good job at the time, thankfully. She was working in like a management position for Vail Resorts. And so she had benefits and a good job. But like, man, I was not. And I would like take jobs, I would work at restaurants and like
Yeah.
fine dining places, wait tables. I managed a snowboard shop that didn't last that long. I was never that great of like I hate working for other people,
Being on the clock, like
Yeah, man, I'm not like I'm a good boss. I'm not a good employee, I think.
yeah,
But I had a lot of jobs. I mean, I wasn't scared to take jobs and work, and I was a pretty good bullshit artist. Like I could just, I could usually get a job. Like I was a good interviewer. So I took a lot of jobs and I started a magazine with someone else. It was called Unveiled Magazine, and that was cool as a learning experience as far as like really putting a publication together. It was a local magazine. We were doing like 10,000 copy runs at first, and we got bigger, and then we tried to go regional. Um,
what was that like? Is it because like to actually make a magazine and like make money from it is a lot of the job, like because you obviously have to find advertisers, and were you just trying to find like local like people to advertise in it, or like how did that work?
yeah, just all the local bit. At first, it was just like all the local businesses at the time. And I think they actually came back, but at the time there was a magazine called Mountain Gazette,
Mm-hmm.
and it was like a regional magazine, kind of, Colorado, Wyoming. I'm trying to think of like where all they existed. But when we went regional, we thought like we could maybe compete with them. And I raised a bunch of money. We did this like lingerie runway show that like was all, it's like we put all this stuff together, we just like do these big parties and raise money. But my partner in it was this girl who was a journalist. She had, gone to school for journalism, and her boyfriend was like this day trader guy, and it turns out he was like taking people's money, man. He was not like
Yeah.
a legit guy. So he was paying for a lot of stuff. We had this cool office and it was fun for a while, but then he just bailed. And unfortunately, he did it right before our first regional publication went out. And I had sold all these ads, so like people had my cell phone number. And yeah, it was a mess, man. It really made me look bad because then people were calling just like, hey, when's that ad come out? And I had to be like, I don't know what to do, like
Oh my God.
this guy that was funding everything just bailed, like he's gone, and he took a bunch of people's money with him, and so but anyway, it was cool just like kind of seeing especially in an editorial sense, like how images live and kind of where like for design and stuff, like it helped me, I think, compose and frame. But right about that time, man, I started like, I just didn't want to have a job anymore, like a job, And so I started shooting weddings, portraits, whatever I could do. And once again, like I was a pretty good hustler. I knew how to like sell, like I could do that part. And so I started doing okay pretty quickly. I started booking weddings and I was just talking about this with somebody else on my show, because it was like a back and forth I had with some of my snowboard photographer friends and skateboard photographer friends that were just like, dude, you're shooting weddings, like can't believe, like that's stupid, And I was like, man, you're tending bar at night. Like I just want to I want to use this tool and make money with it. Like
Skateboarding's always had that attitude of like, oh, you're gonna be sponsored by like Monster or whatever. Who gives a fuck? They're gonna pay you money. Like it's always had skateboarders always had that attitude. Like I get it. Like I don't know, man. It's funny. Like and photographers like that too, dude. Like fucking shoot weddings, man. Make money and then use that money to like do your other shit.
Yeah, man. So like anyway, that magazine went away, and then I was just like, I was struggling, man, and my wife got pregnant, my son, he's about to turn 17 years old. So wow. This was all about 17 years ago, and she was pregnant, and I just saw the writing on the wall. I was like, I've got 9 months to make this dream a reality, or I'm going to like be at some desk job that I hate to support my family. Cause I knew I wasn't going to like let my kids down, so I knew I would do whatever it took to put food on the table and be a good dad. And that probably meant quitting photography. And so I told myself, like, you got 9 months, man, like figure it out. And I was just looking around at like what this place that I live in had to offer. And it's all resorts, extremely expensive homes, like for the people that have 4, 5, 10 homes, it's like some of the wealthiest people in the world, and nice restaurants. And I just thought, like, it seems like everybody that's in the kind of housing based industry, whether it's architects, interior designers, real estate agents, they were all making money. And I just thought maybe I'll start shooting architecture. And I just started messing with it, man. And, and once again, I think I talked a good enough game to like get myself in the door at a few places. And I started building enough of a portfolio. I got hooked up with this real estate company they were willing to like pay pretty decent rates, honestly, especially, I hear some of the horror stories of people just not making any money in that world.
Yeah, dude. I've seen it online. They'll be like, I'll pay you like $100 or like some shit like this. Like what?
Oh man, they were paying me like $200 an image, like in the beginning, and so I just thought, well, this is great, and I started really trying to build a portfolio. And then I had this mentor. He was Jack Affleck. He was the very first guest I had on my show. And at the time, and for many years, he was the director of photography for all of Vail Resorts. So he hired all the photographers, and I started hanging out with him. I started getting some work with Vail Resorts. And he helped me in a lot of ways. He really helped me as just like, the business of it and kind of playing the game of it. And he got me a chance to get my portfolio in front of this group called Rock Resorts, which they were a big resort group at the time. They're no longer. And man, I just lucked into this job. My wife was like, she was maybe 2 months away from giving birth, and I booked this job that was like 25 grand.
Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy. I wasn't ready for it either, but like I got it, you
Yeah, what do
know.
you remember about that? Because like when you go from making whatever a couple $100 or $1,000, and then you make this jump where it's a big job, do you remember being like this completely overwhelmed,
Oh
nervous?
my
Like,
God. All
yeah,
of them.
yeah.
Yeah. I couldn't believe it. I was like, how much? This is crazy. You know? And it was me and this buddy, and we teamed up on it. And I just saw it was like the first time that I really saw the potential of like, oh, there could actually be real money in this.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, Rock Resorts was using this guy who was a national photographer, and he was making a ton of money. And I just thought I want to be that guy, you know, like he goes around because they had resorts all over the world at the time, and he was their main guy. I just lucked into this job. I don't think he wanted it, you know, because it ended up like the places I was shooting were pretty run down, like old Keystone area, like Keystone Breckenridge area.
Mm-hmm.
But the money was great. And my wife, she really wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. And yeah, I went home and I was just like, just quit your job. She was like on maternity leave, you know, and we were living off her benefits and shit. And I was like, just quit your job. I think I can do this, you know.
Wow, man, that takes guts, dude.
I
This is like,
know. It did. But she wanted it so bad, man, and I wanted it for her. And I was like, yeah, fuck it, you know, let's like I can do this, you
mm-hmm.
know. And yeah, man, like I said, my son turned 17 next month, so that was 17 years ago. And she actually still doesn't have a job, so it's
That's
like it's been going good. She homeschooled our kids. I mean, my son went to high school when he was a freshman, but she ended up homeschooling both of our kids. And yeah, I mean, she's got a very full-time job. It just doesn't pay
yeah,
very well, you
yeah,
know.
yeah, exactly. And with like architecture, because this is like a section of photography I really don't know much about. Like, like who's your client as an architectural photographer? Is it just the architects themselves? Is it builders? Obviously, you mentioned the resorts. Who are like clients, or who are the people you're marketing to as an architectural photographer to find work?
Yeah, it's all of those, you know. I mean, I think to to this day, like my biggest clients are mostly architects and interior designers, hotels. I shoot a lot of hotels. Less so actually these days, but yeah, in the early days, man, I was shooting a ton of real estate stuff. You know, it was all like pretty. I mean, I think where I got lucky is because of where I live. It's like, you know, the real estate is 10-20 million dollar homes, you know. So like if you use that opportunity right and you really try to make a portfolio out of it, I was getting access to some incredible places.
Mm-hmm.
And that led to that Rock Resorts job because I was taking it all really seriously and I was really trying to make it look as good as I possibly could. Way more so than I think the real estate agents cared, you know, like I don't think they saw that much of difference, but I was trying to make a portfolio. And then once the Rock Resorts thing happened, I started shooting for them a decent amount, which led to some hotel stuff in my portfolio. And then in 2005, no, I'm sorry, that's when my son was born. So 2008, I think. Yeah, it was like a few years later. So, like I said, 2005 was when it really started happening. And I told my wife to quit her job. 2008, I got picked up by this agent out of New York. And then she definitely helped me like see the light as far as like what my book should look like at a national level. You know, like it's still, I had already like, you know, for a few years thought like I'm making pretty good money here, you know. But then we started shopping my book at like a national level, and it like, you know, it was some of the first times in my life where I just heard like terrible rejection. You
Yeah.
know, it's like horrible things said, but I just took it all in stride and I was willing to go like, okay, like let's change it then. Like, what do I need to do? And it was when I really started paying more attention to, you know, like all the home magazines, Architectural Digest, El Decor, all that shit, and really focusing on that. And then once it got probably about that same time, man, I started building some relationships that I have to this day And fortunately, it was with some architects that were young and they were doing good work and willing to pay a pretty solid day rate. Um, but then they've exploded, and I've been there with them for the last
Wow.
12 years or something. So it's like I've had these very long relationships with some architects that became pretty successful, honestly.
I was talking to my friend the other night. We were just talking about like, I don't know. I feel like, because I've been, this is like my 14th year working in the business, like from going from being an assistant to, PA, whatever, all these different jobs to shooting, whatever. I feel like if you can find a way, like half of like the success, if you can find a way to like stay in the game, the longer you do it, like you just start to build this Rolodex of more clients and people start to know you, it's not
Yeah.
like, I feel like that's, even in the last couple of years, like it's gotten a little easier for me. Like that first like 7, 8 years, man, at least for me, was like a fucking grind. Like I told you when you interviewed
Yeah,
me, I was
man.
like working all these shit jobs, but like you can like find a way just to like this fucking stick through it. Like I think it feels like it gets a little bit easier the longer you're in it.
Oh, for sure, man. And I think all those shit jobs, like they mean something.
Mm-hmm.
Look, I'm excited for the kids that have overnight success. Like I'm not a hater. Like good for them, man.
Get
That's
that bag, man. Get
yeah, get it.
it.
But I think there is something to be said about like that slow grind
Yeah.
because it just makes you appreciate it so much more. Like I'm still trying to figure it out, man. And I've been like, I've also like I've done it for long enough, and the money's been good enough that I have a very comfortable life. I don't have a lot of needs, I
Yep.
guess, like they're met. And I'm still trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up. It's like I don't know that it ever goes away, but I think because of that slow grind, it makes you patient to think like it continues. It's like there's a lot of things I still want to do for sure. And so yeah, I appreciate that it took a while, and then I took some shit jobs. I mean, I remember early on, dude, like during that time when she was pregnant, we bought our first house. um and it was just like we were in debt, man, and it was scary, like
It's
we got
stress.
this
It's a lot of
a
stress.
lot of stress, dude. And I walked around this neighborhood of this house. I made some flyer about like family portraits, and I walked around that neighborhood and knocked on every single door and offered my services to shoot
Wow.
portraits. And like I didn't want to do that shit. It was terrible and like embarrassing,
Yeah.
but I think that's like I was willing to do whatever it took.
Whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like it didn't matter. Once again, I wanted to be a photographer, and like I wanted to be paid to be a photographer. I didn't want to have some other job and also call myself a photographer. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Mm.
Um, it's just that's not what I wanted. And so I swallowed my ego and was willing to just take whatever shit job I could take. And when I took them, I tried to do the very best job I could
Yep.
and use that as a potential for growth and, to build more clients. And to your point, as far as like those managing those relationships, I think that's why I've had the career I've had, man. It's like, I try to treat people like I want to be treated. I'm nice. I'm pretty easy to get along with. And I always try to do the very best I can. Like I don't take for granted that these people are willing to pay my day rate.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no shortage of image makers out there,
Yeah.
so I really feel honored to be picked. And so I'm just trying to do the best I
Yeah,
can.
man. I still get excited. Even like the littlest job, like and that email comes in, I'm like, yes, it's like it's still
Right.
exciting. Like every time, I'm like, all right, I'm still in the game, baby. you know. Uh, but you touched on one thing I think is the kind of smart is that when you're like in a smaller market, like I'm in a smaller market, I'm in Boston, not in New York or LA. You mentioned like you kind of looked around the economy that was around you, and then you kind of
Right.
work. It's almost like you worked backwards, which I think is kind of smart. Like, because I think a lot of times it's easy, like when you're in a different market that's not New York or LA, like it's like different. It's just a different, like you have to have a different mindset or way you approach your business. You think this being in a different, like smaller market like that.
For sure. Yeah, I think it's important, man. And then once again, it depends on what you want out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Because from doing my own show, I think I probably could have had success in the world of action sports photography. I don't know that I really wanted it, like it once again, this is all in hindsight as I look back at
Yeah.
the way it all worked out. But I'm honest enough with myself to say I wasn't willing to put in the time that it took, because I've talked to all those guys. Like I've had all those guys on my show, and it's a very similar story. It's like I was poor as shit for like 10 plus years, and then all of a sudden
Mm-hmm.
shit started popping off and it became something. And I didn't have that time to be broke,
Mm-hmm.
or I wasn't willing to have it, and so yeah, I think I looked at it more as a business sense. It was like a real point of contention with me for a while, and I've talked about it on my own show probably too many times. But like, a common theme, and I'm sure people say it on your show too, that would come up constantly from all these different people that I've talked to, is just like, just shoot what you love, shoot
Mm-hmm.
what you're passionate about, and then it will figure itself out. And I started having like some real doubts of myself, of just like, is that what I did though? Like, did I just sell out? Was I just like, I'll just shoot with, shoot whatever pays? And honestly, man, I think, like part of that story is like when I quit partying and quit all the drugs and all the dumb shit, I got real heavily into meditation. I started going to Zen retreats. I studied with all kinds of teachers, and meditation became a giant part of my life. Um, And now when I look at architecture and what that offers, it's a very like quiet, introspective form of photography. Honestly, man, you don't have like big sets. There's not models. There's not art. I mean, the hotel work has art directors and stuff, but I've built relationships with some of these architects where it's literally like, I won't even bring assistants, man. They're just like, you can have this house for 4 days and you're getting paid every day. And we want to see it through your eyes. And it's pretty meditative
Yeah,
work,
that's actually what I was interested in asking you about, because you're obviously a people person. You wouldn't have a podcast where you interview the strangers every week for years on end. But
right?
so you're obviously enjoy talking to people, being around people. But then your creative thing, like you said, it's a very solitary thing. So it's kind of like it's like two different worlds. It seems like your
Right.
person a little bit.
It is. And I think that kind of reflects my personality.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm pretty introverted in the sense that like I'm a people person in the sense that I can talk to whoever, and I'm not awkward about it, and I'm not shy about it, and I'm confident in my ability to talk to strangers. But as far as like the way my kind of internal battery gets charged, it's in quiet time. It's like
Mm-hmm.
reading books or like quiet spaces.
Yeah.
So I'm an introvert in that sense. And so I think um that's the architecture work. But honestly, I mean, once again, that was like one of the reasons, I started the podcast, is like I didn't, because I live in the mountains, and I do like, I have a cool network of like some creative friends out here, but not like if I lived in New York or LA or something. And so I wanted that, like I
Yeah.
wanted that space to like be able to feed off the energy, like you said, of the young guy that's crushing it, or some girl that just like came out of nowhere and is doing all this cool work. Like I want to feed off that energy. And so that's the podcast. And now I feel like I have kind of the best of both worlds. I have like this quiet meditative space that is architecture work, and that's
Mm-hmm.
not always true. Like I
Yeah.
said, if I'm doing a Ritz Carlton shoot, it's hectic. There's people everywhere and it's stressful. But some of it is, I just did a shoot recently where it was literally just me in a 20,000 square foot home.
That's insane. Yeah, dude, you've gotten to see like some just looking at your site, like I'll link it and people go check it out once I post the podcast. But like the house, like I don't even know like houses like this existed. Like, you know what I mean? They're out there, but they're always probably in like private communities, so you can't even access or even drive by them. It's like the stuff you've gotten to see is just like insane. Like it's like I would imagine sometimes you must walk in these homes and be like, what the fuck? Like,
Every day. Yeah. Every time.
yeah.
Yeah. It's almost like numbing after a while. It's cool. Like I am a big fan. And once again, kind of part of that, me working through like my decision to be an architecture photographer. I am a big fan of architecture and design, and kind of always was, really, especially a lot of like mid-century modern stuff. I love that stuff. But um the world I kind of play in, it's like, man, you're talking about like the top 0.0001%
Yeah.
of wealth in the world. And it's yeah, it's hard. It's a hard existence to live in. So you just realize like the level of wealth, and you're just like, wow, man, it's numbing, because you're dealing with budgets that it's hard to wrap your head around. And some of these places, it's like some of these homes I'm in, man, it's a 10,000 square foot home that would sell for $20 million or something. And people like spend Christmas there,
Yeah, that's the most insane part, dude. Like it's the insane house that they don't even like. They're not even there. Like I just did a shoot on Martha's Vineyard on Tuesday. We went to
Yeah.
this crazy house, and they basically just spend a few weeks there. I'm like, this is crazy.
Crazy. I know. Yeah, it's hard to wrap your head around. And you just like, I've lost all like realistic forms of financial success.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
You
broke a
get
lamp. I broke a lamp. I was doing the shoot in Texas recently. It's the first time I've broken anything in so long, man. Like I think I've only broken two things in a house ever, and I carry an insurance policy and all that shit, a big one.
it's easy to do because I remember I did a shoot, like, not to cut you off, but I did a shoot for, what was it, one of those like TV shows, like I don't know, there was like a home renovation show, and just moving gear and lights and stuff. It's easy to like bump in a wall, bumping in shit. Like it's incredible. You only have it happen to you a couple times.
Oh my god. Anyway, I knocked off this lamp, man. I caught it kind of, but then the way I caught it, it snapped like the base from the top of it and everything. And I was just like, oh man, it was basically the end of the shoot. I was running around trying to get like this dusk stuff on the outside, and I ran in to fix this lamp, and I broke it. And I was talking to the designer, and she's just like, don't worry, it's really not that bad. And I was like, what do you mean though when you say not that bad? And she was like, I think it was like $6,200. I'm sorry. Did you just tell me a lamp? And it was just a lamp, dude.
But
I mean,
$6,200 to those people is just like a dinner.
Yeah. Crazy, man. So just shit like that where you're like, this is ridiculous, but it's cool, man. And it, like in a design sense, I'm inspired by it, especially with architects and a lot of interior designers. It's like it's a weird mix, because it's like your job to capture someone else's art form, so it's like a collaboration of, this is the way I see this space that you spent so much time designing.
And like, what kind of projects like pique your interest these days? Like, obviously, as looking at your site, you've gotten to do incredible hotels and these homes, but like, what, when you get the call these days, what kind of gets you excited?
That's a good question. I don't know, man. I mean, sometimes it's like when you get there, like I like to like kind of live with the space for a second before I really start breaking out equipment. And if I'm lucky, I get to do a walkthrough, but I don't always. A lot of times it's just like the place is in this location, you got to travel to get there. And so I like to just kind of sit with it and see the way the light plays with it. And but I don't know, man. I think the doing the show has like encouraged me to fall in love with photography again. Like that was the big impetus of the podcast, is like I had turned a love of photography into just like a job. It was a good job and I liked my job, but it was a job, and I had lost that passion of like picking up my camera and taking pictures of random objects that I had when I was like, had my dad's old camera, and taking shitty film pictures. And so doing the show like has inspired that in me. I was having this conversation, I don't remember who I was talking to. And I've gotten better about just, like I've got a little Fuji X Pro 3 that's like my daily kind of driver, and I love just like taking random photos that I probably won't show anybody, like
it'd be cool, man. Like, even this, like, to throw like a little section on your website or something, because I think it like shows a little bit of your personality a little bit,
Yeah, you're right. I know.
I love that stuff. Even like my friend Aaron Smith, he's a photographer in LA, talented dude. Like, he mostly shoots like commercial lifestyle advertising, but he has like a section on his website where it's just like, I think he calls it weekly, and it's literally just that. It's like, it could be pictures he took on his cell phone or like some little point and shoot. And I just like, I almost get more excited about that shit than like the professional stuff, because it's like, oh, I want to see what that dude's up to. Like, you know?
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right, man. I think it's hard when you get like self-conscious about like showing people stuff. It's like you build a certain look or something. You're like, I don't know, man. I'm like, what
Yeah, it's
if,
like you feel like everything needs to be like that's
yeah,
the way almost like Instagram. I basically treat it like a portfolio, but then
yeah.
like half the time, like when I post the most random shit like on my story, that will get the most engagement. It could be like some piece of pizza I got or like whatever. And like people get more excited about that shit than like my like professional, like perfect, like whatever, you know?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm sure you get this on your show, but like, a big thing I started learning was just like the amount of commercial work that people were booking off like weird personal projects,
Yeah.
like stuff that you would think like, really, they booked you off that, and they're like, yeah, man, that's crazy. And so I think you're right. I mean, I think it gives an art director, art buyer, whoever, like some insight into kind of the way you see things.
And you live in a cool place. Like for you, like where this is why I always tell people, like for you, like where you live, like you've been there for a long time and like you drive down the street, like it's just like normal. But for me, like if I saw whenever I get to see someone like my friend Aaron lives in LA, it's like it's just a different like landscape and different city. And I like getting to see it because like my day to day is just boring because I've been here forever. But probably
Yeah.
if I post a picture of this, people will be like, wow, that's really cool. Like New England, like old houses. Like I was
Yeah.
thinking that the other day. I was like, man, I gotta like shoot some more of this like cool New England shit because it's just there's so much history to it, but I take it for granted because I'm just always been here.
Yeah. Isn't
Yeah.
that funny? Yeah, I totally agree with you. And it's something, you get jaded to like your daily surroundings. And like I've got like view. I mean, I can look out my studio window and see like the New York mountain range out there, and so
Crazy, dude.
um it is cool, I mean, some of it like it's just funny because you're so right, man. It's like I'll drive to Denver, which is close, but it's like I'll drive to Denver to go take city shots because I'm
Yeah.
bored looking at mountain towns. And a lot of this area, it's like it's become so kind of Disney-fied by Vail resorts and stuff. It became like such it used to like have like a kind of local flair about it, and just more and more
So like
as
brand
billionaires move in,
fancy
it
condos and shit. That's
yeah.
like Boston. There's like a section in Boston. It's called the Seaport District. Like it used to like basically my whole life. It was just kind of like it was basically it's like an industrial area. There was nothing down there. It was like there was like fish processing plants and like truck warehouses and shit like that. But they
Mhm.
just in the last like 10, 15 years, they've completely renovated it. And it's all this like luxury condos, like $3,600 for like a 700 square foot apartment and like fancy ass restaurants. But like it has no personality. It feels like when you go there,
Right.
it's just like a warehouse. I feel like I'm like at like a Costco neighborhood or some shit. Whereas opposed if you go to old Boston, that's like the real shit, you know?
Totally. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's funny too, because it's like I feel like such a hypocrite sometimes because even like Vale Resort, like there's kind of the Vale Village side, and then there's what's called the Lion's Head side. It's all like
Mm-hmm.
ski mountain area, Vale. They basically tore that whole place down and rebuilt the whole thing. And I loved like what it used to be. When I first got here, it felt very local, and there were like some dive bars even that tourists didn't go into. And but at the same time, like I shot every single like I got hired by the Four Seasons, I got hired by the Arabelle, I got hired by, like every resort that got built there. I was booking like week-long projects that was
Yeah.
like 20-minute drive from my house. It was amazing. And I hate them at the same time,
Yeah, I get it, man. It's a double-edged sword. It's like, oh, the new shit pays my bills, but then it's like it loses a little bit of that personality. But I get it.
Yeah.
And I guess a few more questions. I'll let you go.
Oh,
But
dude.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, like we kind of talked about the podcast a little bit, but like when you started your podcast, were you like a big podcast listener, kind of consumer of podcasts, or like
Yeah.
what was kind of the impetus? Like you kind of mentioned a little bit, like starting your show.
Yeah. Yeah. Visual Revolutionary, by the way, everybody.
Oh
Check it
yeah, I'll tag it. All that people go check it
out.
out. He's got all the big interviews.
All the ones that you have as well,
That's
so
not true. You got Seliger, man. I haven't interviewed him.
oh yeah, that was a big one for me.
Yeah,
He was big. He was someone that I did like, once again in hindsight, where it's like he represented so much like visual input coming in for me, man. I was a Rolling Stone subscriber for years, and it was just like, man, he was like the
yeah,
eyes of that magazine for so long, especially the cover.
yep.
but anyway, yeah, like I said, that the show, started out of really a desire to kind of re-inspire, my own love of photography. Is just really burned out, man. I think it happens to everybody. It's a question I ask on my show at the end of pretty much every episode, is like, do people face creative burnout? And if so, how do they deal with it? And what I've learned from most people is they shoot a lot of personal projects. And I wasn't, like, I got into this mindset of like, it costs this much money for me to shoot, and if you're
Mm-hmm.
not paying that, I'm not interested.
Yep.
And because I had that stupid attitude for a while, I missed the opportunity to shoot a lot of cool projects that I should have just shot for free, and
Yep.
and it just started feeling like a job I was basically clocking into. And yeah, I was listening to a lot of podcasts. I was listening to Mark Maron's podcast early on, and like the early Rogan stuff. And I liked Marin specifically, his kind of recipe of like that. How do you grow up? Where you from? Like really getting to know people,
Yep.
and in my naivety, I didn't think anyone else was doing that in the photography space. And I
Yeah.
was confident enough to go like, I'm reinventing a photography podcast. Turns out Ubari and X was already doing that
For
with
like 15 years.
but I went head first into it, and yeah, I've been doing it ever since. I'm trying to remember when I even started. It was like 2015, I think, 14
And
maybe.
didn't you start with a co-host at first?
Yeah, Kevin, who he was kind of my right hand man, my DP for we do a lot of commercial video stuff. And yeah, man, he studied filmmaking and sound design at SCAD. And so he was able to come in and just be like, this is how you do good audio, and this is how you edit audio. And after we did it for a while, he was like, look, dude, this is kind of your thing. I don't, like really need to be here anymore. I feel like I've shown you how to do it. And, the timing kind of worked out. We had, like I've had a few moments throughout the show where it's like I disappear for a couple months because I get real busy with shooting.
Yep.
And as you know, it's hard to do this, man. It's like hard to juggle this fairly time consuming podcast with also running a successful photography studio. And so we had gone through one of those lulls, and it was the longest one ever. It was kind of a bummer because I had Jason Lee on, and the numbers really went up, and then I just fucking disappeared for months, And so yeah, when I came back, Kevin, my co-host, was just like, I think you got it now, and I've tried to keep it going, man. It's a chore sometimes, but it's a chore I love doing. And so
yeah, weekly's hard, man. Like I was doing weekly for like first 4 years, and now I've kind of like slowed down a little bit. Like I think I'm just gonna try to do every other week, because like you said, man, it's just like weekly's tough, because like it's not like, even when you say weekly, if you're trying to do a weekly episode, you end up doing like multiple interviews a week a lot of times, because it's just how it like lines up to have that many going at a time. So, yeah,
just all the work that goes into, as trying to get people on the show, trying to juggle your own schedule with someone else's schedule, cancellations, good Lord, how many times, I'm sure you're the same way, the people like cancel on you last minute.
Well, I did it to you like the other day. I was like, yeah, job came in, I gotta move it today.
You caught me in a good week, so I wasn't the least bit upset, but I'm sure it's like, and I'm just used to like, whatever, man, that's part of it. Like I used to, once again, I think in the early days, like part of my ego was just like, what the fuck? And the podcast has been great for my ego, because it's very humbling. You're the last on everybody's list, man. Like they don't give a shit about your show, and they're doing you a favor. And that's the way I look at it. I'm like, these people are doing me a favor by coming on my show, and I will bend over backwards and try to work around however my schedule allows, especially when you're talking about someone, like Seliger or something, where you're just like, this dude he's not going to gain anything from doing my podcast.
No. Yeah. And do you feel like did it take you a while to get comfortable like being an interviewer? Like has your approach to like interviewing people like changed, like this year, I guess, how you approach it, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I hope I've gotten better, like I think I talked to, like, probably during this interview, I've talked too much, like, and that's something I had to work on early on, like, it's, like I'm still learning, man, but I think I've gotten better at like getting out of the way and letting my guests talk, and not feeling like I need to, constantly interject some
Mm-hmm.
personal story. And
Yep.
even sometimes when I do, like I'll cut them out, because the problem is like sometimes, and once again, I'm sure you've experienced this. It's like sometimes people, they give you shit about doing that, but they haven't experienced of like, you set someone up with like some long thought out question, and then they just go, "Yep."
Yeah, it's tough. Like yeah, it is like a song and dance. Like, and one thing I don't know about you, but like the thing I learned from like interviewing all these people, and I'm not even the best at it. Like having the ability to talk about your work and like your process is like a skill.
Oh my
Like,
god, yeah.
like Dan Winters, like that dude's the best at it.
He's the
Like he
master. Yeah.
just talking. Like I'm not good. Like I know what I do. Like I know how to take pictures, but like talking about it is hard. So I don't get mad when people like freeze up because I understand it. But I guess I didn't realize that until I started interviewing people that like having the ability to talk about your work and explain it to people is like such a skill and important to do, I think, in terms of like when you're working commercially, you know?
Yeah. Well, and I think like with my show, man, I wanted people to tell me like the dirt, like when they were young, and like
Mm-hmm.
I was telling you, like, oh, I
Yeah.
don't know, then I was a scumbag for a minute, but like I want to hear about that. And I think it's important for other people to hear that you didn't like come out of the womb all freshly polished like you're trying to sell yourself. And so
Yeah.
sometimes it's like I'm trying to tell some personal anecdote to get the other person to also share some personal anecdote with me. But like I think I've become a better listener because of the show, but it's an ongoing evolution. I think I'm still
It's tough.
learning.
I always love, I mean, I always, even before podcasts were a thing, like I always loved watching interviews. Like Larry King, like for me, like that guy was like the best interview because of that reason. Like if you watch his interviews, he rarely like interjects himself. He literally just like has like good questions. And he asks them and he lets the person go. And I'll
Right.
even like, I try to get better at that. Like if there is a pause, like don't freak out. Like take a breath
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
then see what they say. But it is, there's like that moment, like when you first start, you're like, if there's like a moment of pause, you think you like need to interject, but I'm trying to get better at like just let it breathe, you know.
Yeah.
But it's hard to do. um, but
I was letting it breathe after you said
there you
that.
go, dude. Joke. Uh,
I was just gonna be quiet the whole time.
fucking jokester. Um, and like, how do you generally prepare when you're doing an interview? Do you like do a lot of research, or you just kind of look at their website real quick, or like how do you kind of prepare when you're gonna like interview somebody?
Should probably not good enough. Like man, I'm pretty good on my toes. I think I can just talk to people. But yeah, I mean, I'm prepared enough. I listen
Mm-hmm.
to your show sometimes because they've probably done it already. Yeah, I look to see if they've done a podcast because that makes life way easier. And I can just like do the dishes or something and listen to the person talk and learn about them a little bit. But yeah, I do some research. I mean, yeah, I look at their work, I look at their Instagram feed, I look at their website, I look at their client list, and at least try to, you know, kind of wrap my head around like what they've done and stuff. But prepare. I think I want to be prepared enough, but I've noticed like some of the times, especially early on when I had like some legendary shooter, I'd get real prepared, man. Like I'd make notes and shit, have them all out in front of me, like really wanting to like do a good interview. And then I felt like I was like trying to drive the conversation based off shit I'd written down, and instead of just letting the conversation
Yeah, it
flow.
gets like too clunky when you're trying to
Yeah.
do that. Yeah, it's tough.
So I feel like as long as I know enough about them, like the conversation's going to go wherever they want it to go anyway, and so like I don't need to push too many points, but it's nice to like, I mean, in all honesty, like I love seeing someone that most of my recent guests have all done your show. And so I love it when I see that they've been on photo banter because I'll just listen to that, and because it gives me a good idea of like their voice and their kind of speaking rhythm and stuff,
Yeah,
which
and
is
like how comfortable they're gonna be like getting
yeah.
interviewed and stuff. Yeah, I can see that makes sense. And like, what do you feel like? What do you think you've like learned most from like getting the opportunity to like speak to like all these hundreds of people?
I mean, I think the biggest thing is just like that we all a couple things. One of the biggest things is we all doubt ourselves. You know, it's like we all deal with that imposter syndrome of like, who the fuck am I to be here? You know, like it's definitely something I deal with every day. You know, like recently, man, I had a project. It was a big project. I got paid well. It was like a 4-day shoot, and it had so much content in it. It was video production, like 100 photos. I edited it forever. You know, it took
Hmm.
forever to finish it. And I think because I was like so in the rabbit hole of the edit, I just started being like, man, this shit sucks. You know, like I just like, this is no good. You know,
Hmm.
I was kind of down on myself and really had one of those moments of just like, man, I'm just not very good at this, you know? And then I turned the project over and everybody involved in it was ecstatic and loved the work. And you're like, oh, yeah, I guess it's okay. And so I think when I talk to some of these people, even like the Dan Winners and stuff out there, they seem to question their own validity of, you know, for their job. And
Yeah.
it just makes you feel better about yourself. Like, oh, yeah, we all like, I think unless you're just a total narcissist, then most likely you don't think you're that good all the time.
Yeah, man. I remember like when I interviewed Emily Scher. I don't know if you're familiar with her work,
Yeah,
but
sure.
she's a badass student. And she was like, even like, she's like, yeah, man, like I have that self doubt all the time. Like, I'm like, I was like, never would think that because like she's shooting like the biggest stars and key art for all these shows. And I would be like, yeah, it's just like you make up this like thing in your mind of like what you think these successful people are like, but in reality, they're still dealing with the same like self doubt or whatever.
Totally. It was the, you know, like I said, when I was listening to Marin's podcast early on before I even started mine, you know, sometimes you'd have like some celebrity on and they would have that attitude and you're like, oh my God, this person's like, you know, some big actor and they seem like they're so self-conscious of their own work, even though they're killing it.
Yeah.
And so I almost was like looking for that, you know, when I started my show. And sure enough, man, I found it with almost every guest. And so I think it's comforting for most people to hear that, you know, I don't know that ever goes away. And I think it's a good sign that it's like you care, you know,
Yeah.
you want to get better. And so I don't think I've done my best work yet, you know, like I really like, I think, you know, like I've been doing it, like I said, I've been shooting architecture as a career for the last 17 years. And I really feel like I'm just kind of
Yeah.
in the groove of it, you know? And so like, I want to be better, man. I strive to be better. And it's nice to hear other people feel the same way, even though they've been shooting for 30 years.
Oh yeah. And I had to ask, like, who's your white whale, man? Who do you want on the podcast? Who's like dream guest? You haven't had them on. Is there anybody who sticks in your mind that you're like, that's what I want to get them on?
There's a couple. I mean, there's a few, but I mean, Platon's he's on that list, man. I love that dude's work. I've had a ton of back and forth with, I'm sure you did the same to get him on your show.
Yeah, it took a long time.
Yeah, I've had a lot of back and forth with his studio manager there. I think it'll happen eventually.
Yep.
Annie Leibovitz, I'd love to
Me
have.
too, man. That's my white whale, dude. Like, what?
Yeah,
I don't know how I would get her on. That's the thing. I don't even think she has a website, dude. Like,
I've reached out to her agent, which is, you know, I mean, it's a
yeah.
very big agent.
Yep.
Never heard a thing back.
Mm-hmm.
There's a few, man, but she's a big one, you know. And it's like as I'm sure you feel like, you know, you get some of these people, Albert Watson, Mark Seliger, and you think like, come on, Annie, you know, it's like,
Dude, Albert at aim, that dude's a motherfucking legend. Like that
yeah,
dude's like such a boss, cool as hell to deal with. Like,
yeah, he's so nice, man.
and I
So
reach out, they're
humble.
like, yeah, when you want to do it? Like
Totally.
next week. It wasn't like I didn't have to reach out 10 times. It was like, sure, sounds good. I was like,
Exactly.
it's fucking
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, same. It's his son, even that's like the studio manager there. And he was just like, yeah, he'd love to do it. What day do you want to do it? You know,
Yeah.
and then Albert himself is like so just cool and humble. And but yeah, there's a few. Steve McCurry, I've tried to get on for years. I can't ever seem to line it. Once again, tons of back and forth. And
Yep.
and like I said before, it's like very good to keep my ego in check because it's very humbling to just
Yep.
be constantly told like, yeah, sure, we'll do it, and then they ghost you for months, you know. And you're
Yeah.
just like, come on, man. I thought,
Yeah. It's patience. It's patience. That's
yeah,
all it is.
patience and like, dude, that is the whole photo business, you know.
Oh
It's
yeah, definitely.
I tell a lot of young people like, man, just go ahead and get used to like rejection and no's, and be willing to learn from some of that rejection, but mostly like don't take it personally and just, believe in yourself, man. If you really want it, keep moving on, because that shit never goes away, man. It's like for every yes I get on a big project, I've had 10 no's, so
Yeah, man, it's a lot of no's. Like I had a job earlier last week. It was gonna be like a good bank job, like good money, and then the fucking Omicron had to go like kill it, dude. Like they like canceled the shoot, but then I was just like, I could have been like bummed out and pissed, but I was like, whatever, it is what it is.
right.
Work on the next thing, see what happens, you know.
Omicron, man. I just
Yeah,
lost a job for that too. It was a hotel gig, and then they were just like, our whole staff has COVID right now, so we're gonna have to cancel. And I was like, God.
yeah, dude. I was gonna that must be tough with your business because like you're shooting like private homes. Have you found that like harder to shoot like with the COVID and shit? Like people they don't want you coming in shooting or like how does
Oh,
that
because
work?
nobody's in them anyway.
Oh yeah, true. That's good. They're in the Bahamas or some shit.
That's right. I mean, a little bit, like at first, the biggest hit I took because of COVID was hotel work. I
Yeah,
have seen that dissipate quite a bit, but
yeah.
luckily, a lot of these architects and interior designers I work for, they're as busy as they've ever been, because once again, these very wealthy people decided they needed a mountain home or an Austin home or whatever it is. And so they've been buying property and building property and all kinds of stuff.
I feel like at a certain point, like the hotel shit's gonna come back and people are gonna start traveling again. So I bet like I would imagine you're gonna be fucking cranking with the hotel stuff again. I would bet because like they
So
at certain point they got to start advertising again and doing a lot of stuff to get people back out there. You know.
I think so. And honestly, dude, I think it's like I need to, hopefully before you even drop this podcast, I can update my website, which I haven't done in years. But I need to like, my marketing it's lacking, because I've managed to stay busy like through word of mouth and stuff for
Hmm.
years. And so, it's not terrible. It looks good enough. But I think what's happening in a lot of the hotel world is like the Joe Greers out there and stuff. And I love Joe. I think he does beautiful work, but like some of these almost like Instagram kind of influencer photographers are
Yep.
booking Ritz Carlton gigs and stuff. And they're looking less for like the polished architecture work and more for like
The
the
lifestyle.
yeah, kind of the vibe of being there, and I get it, man. I'm not like, my feelings aren't hurt over it. I'm just trying to figure out like, where I fit in that mix.
No, that makes sense. I'm sure you'll figure it out. Oh,
Yeah,
I was gonna ask you, have you ever done any of your interviews in person, or have they always just been over the computer the whole time?
they started off in person. All the original ones, which I encourage people to not listen to because I think it wasn't very good. But all the original ones, it was like Corey Richards and Andy Mann and Keith Ledzinski and all
Hmm.
these Colorado guys. Those
Okay.
guys are all based out of Boulder and Fort Collins and Denver and stuff. And so at first I was like, man, I can just hit all these like big National Geographic shooters and stuff, and they're close by.
Yeah.
Um and I got them all. And then I had friends too, Bo Bridges and same way Xavier and some of these people that they lived here for a while and then moved to LA and stuff. And then it just became such a hassle. I know you've done so many in person, and like
Not no, not since COVID. Like I've only done two in person since COVID. But
I know,
yeah.
but before that, you were doing the model that I wanted to do.
Well,
Like,
it's easier for me because I'm only 3 hours from New York, and like the way I would do it was like if I had like a slow week and I would like pre-COVID, like I'd make meetings and go like show my portfolio at like an agency or like some magazine or whatever, and then I would book like one or two podcasts at the same time. So it just made sense.
right.
That's like the only reason that's the only way I've been able to do it when it was in New York stuff.
Yeah, but it's cool, dude. I like the way you were doing it. And you like, you would take a trip to California, and because
Yeah.
of that, it's like it's pretty personal, like doing
Yeah.
it the way we're doing. I still like I
Oh
stay
yeah.
I stay in touch with a lot of people. I know you do too. And
Yeah.
and that's amazing. You have some of these like legendary figures that text you or something. You're like, this is so weird. This is a person I used to look up to, and or I mean I
Yeah.
still look up to.
Definitely.
But I think the way you did it, where you actually got to spend time with them in person and go
Yeah.
to Larry Fink's farm and
Yeah.
at a damn winter studio. That's amazing, dude.
Yeah, man, I miss it. Hopefully I can get back to doing some more in-person ones, but I think it's still gonna be a little while until people are comfortable with that stuff, you know?
And when it just becomes so much, it's just so much easier to schedule, And unfortunately, I think now that everybody realized like we can just do everything on Zoom, it's like a lot of those people are like, can we just do it on Zoom though? Because I don't really want to,
I'll put yeah, that is like that for sure. And
Uh-huh.
but whatever, here's what it is. I guess last question, man. What's next for you? What's on anything on bucket list or anything you're hoping to work on this year coming up here?
I mean, I just did photo banner, so I can
Oh.
check it out. I like what you're doing, man. I'm really stoked to do your show, and when I'm glad I got to have you on mine. I don't know what's next, man. Like I'm always open. I am. There's a couple projects I've got in the works that are filmmaking projects, and like I said, one of the biggest things I learned from my show is like chasing personal work that not only doesn't pay sometimes, but maybe cost you money.
Yeah, I want to see some of that on your website, Rick. Man, it's straight business right now,
there.
which is good. But I want to see some Rick personality stuff on there, dude.
I'm getting there. I'm
Yeah.
getting there. But I'm trying to make a documentary film, and we're gonna make it happen, and possibly another podcast in the works. So yeah, we'll see what happens.
Oh, like a non-photography podcast, like a different one.
Yeah, we'll see. It's got a lot of elements. It's a content across all platforms kind of
All right.
project that involves a lot of video, and if it works, it works, and if it doesn't, then it's been a bunch of meetings for naught.
Hey, that's awesome, man. It's exciting. Get out there and try stuff.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do, man. I'm just trying to keep living the dream here. I'm having fun, so I just want to keep having fun.
Awesome. Well, Rick, it was a pleasure, man. I was glad to have you on. And I guess for people listening, if they want to check out more of your work, where should they go?
Stovall Studio. I'm sure you'll link me, but
Yep.
Stovall Studio, visualrevolutionary.com is the podcast platform. At Stovall Studio, at Visual Revolutionary on Instagram. And once again, dude, it's been fun hanging out with you again. I like what you're doing, and I like the ability to kind of cross-pollinate our platform. Like I've got no jealousy over anyone out there doing stuff, so it's fun to hang out with
Hell
the
yeah,
other
man.
podcasters.
Hell yeah. Well, thanks so much, Rick. I guess we can cut it there. So there you have it. That was the Ric Stovall interview. Just want to thank Rick so much for taking the time to come on the podcast. It was great to connect again. He was gracious enough to have me on his podcast a few months ago. So I really enjoyed speaking with Rick and just kind of hearing about his path with photography and, doing his own podcast as well, The Visual Revolutionary, which you guys should all go check out. It's available on all podcast platforms, and you can go follow him on Instagram at Visual Revolutionary. And if you want to see more Rick's photography work, you can go follow him on Instagram as well at Stovall Studio. Lots of amazing architectural work up there. Rick's been in the game for a long time, so definitely go check that out. And as always, thanks so much for listening, and take care.